Call to order the City Council work session for the City of East Grand Forks for Tuesday, January 14th, 2020. It is now 5 o'clock. City Administrator, please call roll.
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Galstad.
Here.
Council Vice President Chad Grassel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Fetter.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Tim Riepel.
Here.
Tim Johnson.
Here.
Mark Demers.
Present.
Does term quorum. Number 1, request to purchase furniture for City Area's Transit Facility. Ms. Ellis.
City's Area Transit is building a new facility with federal dollars. Back in 2018, we applied for a state grant to help with the construction of that building. The state will not pay for any money in the construction of the building, so that request was denied. However, the federal government, our FTA partners, stated that we had appropriations available to use for capital spending, which we had not programmed yet. Those dollars typically expire within 4 years. They felt that this was a good project to help with the city's area transit, and so I'm asking that we accept the bid from Norby's for the purchase of furniture. It looks like the total project with that and some refrigerator appliance type items will be around $160,000. The FTA dollars that we have will pay for the 80%, and then the city of Grand Forks is willing to pick up the local share. So it will not cost the city any money.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Ellis? Mr. Vetter?
Can those FTA dollars be used for anything other than transit?
No.
Okay.
No, we can use them for capital or operating. We have gotten the state of Minnesota to allow us to use more of those dollars for operating expenses, because that is typically our, that's what we do a majority of the time, is run, dial-a-ride, and fixed route. And so we do have the increase to a 75-25, but these dollars were appropriated before that, so we weren't able to use more of that. So we do have to spend a portion of this on capital, so we thought this would be a good use of those.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? I see none. Thank you, ma'am. Number 2, request to purchase ticket vending and fare box equipment for transit service. Ms. Ellis.
This is a twofold request. The first one is that currently our fare boxes are sold by a supplier called GFI GenFare. They are one of the only suppliers in the United States. We're hoping to upgrade all of our fare boxes. The city of Grand Forks has done all of their buses. We're hoping to upgrade our buses and then include a fare card vending machine, which means we don't have to have a person available to sell those. If they want to purchase a 10 pass or a monthly pass, they can go up, purchase the card, similar to what you can do with other mass transit. This will also be from GenFare. So what we did was we looked into purchasing from other companies that would require us to upgrade everything. All of our support software, our hardware, all of our fare boxes, the cost would have been significantly higher to redo. So we're asking to sole source this procurement and just use GenFare. So it comes in at about, let's see here. I think it was $220,000, which is what our grant was for, and our 20% match has already been budgeted in this year's 2020 budget. So the twofold question will be at the council meeting is allowing us to use sole source for a procurement method and then approving the bid.
Mr. Demers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Where will this vending machine reside?
Right now, it's going to be in the downtown facility. We're still looking at possibly doing a larger transit transfer center on 17th in South Washington, where the Hope Church is right now. They've purchased and own that whole block there, and they're looking at maybe using that more as our center or hub for transit, because it's kind of more in the center part of town now for both Grand Forks and East Grand Forks. But right now the ticket vending machine is going to go in the downtown transfer center.
So Grand Forks is already using the GenFare system?
Yes, and so are we.
Did they already have a vending machine or anything?
No, this is the first vending machine we'll have. Right now we have a person that sits behind a counter and sells tickets.
I'm just wondering is there any chance to split some of that local share then? If it's going to be in Grand Forks, it's going to,
Well, they're purchasing all of the software.
okay.
And they're purchasing all of the upgrades, and so what we did was we decided that they took on a majority of the expenses for the training and the software, which was also a major upgrade, because it's also going to allow us to use the QWERTY on your phone, so you can also purchase and have the app on your phone so that you can swipe on your phone, so that's an additional expense that they're paying for.
So that was my second question, is you can purchase through your phone or through
Yep,
web?
online,
And
yep.
it's like a, okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Some people are comfortable with that. Other people are more comfortable with having a physical card.
Right. But it's 2020, so.
Yep.
Mr. Riepel.
It's laid in, everything's set up, ready for us.
Yes, exactly. Everything on that quote includes everything from purchase all the way into installation, so.
Is there anything on the east side where they can purchase those tickets, or do they have to purchase them all at the facility downtown?
Right now, it's at the transfer station, but they could purchase on the bus with the new fare boxes that we have if they truly wanted to. They could swipe a credit card through and pick whatever pass they wanted. The upgrade that we're doing to the entire fare collection is going to, bring us into the ability for them to use pretty much whatever they want to, cash, credit card, use, put it on their phone, have a card available, so it kind of allows them to use whatever method of payment they want, so.
Well, they'd probably be able to do it off their phone if, I'm just thinking if they wanted to be picked up on the north end, and.
Yep, they can do it online.
Okay.
They would be able to do it with a credit card on the bus if they wanted to, purchase right there, so.
Anybody else have any questions? I see none. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Number 3, request to purchase snow blower. Mr. Stordahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we would like to purchase an additional snow blower for the Public Works Department. The snow blower, if we're approved to purchase, would be mounted on a New Holland tractor that we have. It would serve the purpose of being a backup when our other 2 snow blowers are down, which happens more frequently than you would think. We would also utilize this snow blower to work on 23rd Street in the Industrial Park, Tech College area, where you have the most issues with like wind and drift in. We'd also use it to widen out areas by mailboxes and such things like that. It's not as large as the 2 payloader mounted snow blowers that we have, but it's still large enough that we can load trucks with it. We can cast snow with it. MnDOT has been using this same brand of snow blower here on Highway 220, if you saw them blowing out there. They've had really good luck with it. They trade their equipment fairly often, so we've contacted us. One of the cities was up in Canada that uses it just to ask about repairs and maintenance and stuff like that, and they've had really good luck with the brand. They said that the one they currently have, they've had for 4 years with just regular maintenance. There hasn't been any issues with it at all, so. It is a budgeted item. We budgeted $35,000 for it, assuming there'd be some more inflation. The actual price is, per the Minnesota State contract page, is $26,121. I guess that's all I have, unless somebody has questions.
Questions for Mr. Stordahl? Mr. Helms.
I'm all for the snowboard thing, but my question would be, I'm assuming this brand is like a heavy-duty thing. I mean, it's heavy. I mean, it's something you can't buy at like a local implement dealer, or are those a little bit lighter? Or?
It's a lighter duty than what we have on our payloaders, but it's heavy duty enough that not only MnDOT but the state of North Dakota uses the same things like on the interstate approaches and stuff like that. So they seem to hold up really good. They've had very good luck with it.
Well, I've seen them use it on 220 North up there, it works, but I'm just wondering if it was, something that could be picked up locally at an implement dealer, or they don't carry anything like this, or is this a totally
nothing
different
like
brand?
that. Yeah, it's a totally different.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you, sir. Number 4, request to purchase stormwater pump. Mr. Stordahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. So lift station number 15 is a stormwater lift station. It's located north of 23rd Street Northwest. The pumps that were in there were installed in 2005. They're unlike a lot of our other pumps where stormwater lift stations are usually, we remove the pumps when we're not using them in the wintertime and stuff like that and get to service them. These pumps are in there all year long, and as long as there's water, they're running. We had some issues with them this summer and this fall. The one is basically, it's still running, but on its last leg. Just, it's not running efficiently at all. The other one is not too far behind. So we're asking to replace these two pumps. It's at $72,928.50, which includes installation too, as long as there isn't some kind of underlying, other issue in there. But this would be the lift station that draws down that swale that's on the north side of 23rd. So.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Rapel?
What do you do with the old pumps?
The one we're not going to be able to do anything with. It's just trash. The other one we're going to keep and use for a backup in case one of these goes down, because we don't have. We typically try to do that at all lift stations, even the sanitary sewer lift stations. Have one backup pump in there, and that's what we do with the other one for now.
Parts?
For parts, yeah. Yep.
Good. Just want to make sure you just can take them out and throw them away.
Is there anything to rebuild? To come in and bushings? And
the one that's in decent shape, or not decent, but the better of the two, that one we would probably rebuild it. Parts of it, the other one is pretty much a lost cause. It has things like 2x4s in it and all kinds of different things. Have rattled it pretty hard, so. Yep.
Mr. Demers.
Thank you, Mr. President. So how does this fit in? We're 20 years out from construction. How does this fit in with like a master replacement plan for stormwater lifts? Do we have,
how frequently?
Well, like where are we at? Do we have a bunch more that are coming up in the next 5 years or
Yes.
2 years or what?
We're going to have we're discussing it right now, but like our sanitary lift stations, we try to replace one lift a year if it needs it. And that rotation has been working pretty good. On our storms, they don't get used as much, but sometimes that's not good either because they sit just dry. And so we do have a plan to replace. These ones will be different, however, just because they run the amount of volume that they pump through there is quite a bit more than any of the other ones. So I would guess that this will be probably a 15-year rotation, something like that on these. Where the other ones will probably be able to extend that life, or instead of replace, maybe repair instead of replace some. But the stormwater lift stations are definitely going to need some upgrades here in the next few years. The SCADA is probably the first thing that we're going to need updated, and then
So we're planning, there are probably ones at 16 and 8 and 9 and
1
and
12.
12 and 7. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm trying to remember back, but is this the first set that we're replacing? That we just replaced?
Yep. Of the new, yep. Okay. It would be of the new lift stations. Yep. This would be the first one.
Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Helms.
Is this just pumps that we're getting, or do they have motors on them, or are you using the old motors?
No, it's the whole
It's the whole works?
Yeah.
Okay, and then it's a good quality one? It's.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we switched over to this brand for sanitary pumps just because of the quality and the price, both.
Okay.
And having very good luck, and now we're just actually trying to get everything the same.
Yep.
So that if we need to swap pumps or parts or whatnot, it's fairly easy to do that.
And when would they have these put in by, do you know, have any idea? Or? Or I guess
I'm trying to remember. Sometime this early spring we would have them.
Yeah, okay. Because I'm pretty sure we're going to need them.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything? See none? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Number 5, request to purchase Toro Infield Pro 5040. Reid.
Thank you, Mr. President. So in the budget for this year, 2020 budget, we allocated $30,000 for an Infield Groomer. This is would be a new piece of equipment that we would have. It's not replacing anything that we currently have on site that would be used for this purpose. Currently, we're using an ATV style machine with a drag behind it. So this one is a little bit more specialized, specifically for ball fields. It's got a front mount, a mid mount, and a rear attachment, so that you can get a little bit more specialized in how you drag and kind of rake and pin the field to keep the aggregate to the plane standard we'd like it to be. And if we order it before the end of January, we can still lock in on the 2019 state contract pricing. So that's what's in front of you today from MTI Distributing. When we went through and selected looking at the attachments that we'd like, we visited with some other communities in Minnesota that have it. The St. Paul Saints being one that have a machine, or multiple machines just like this, and they actually suggested the attachments that we would look to get with this for a community our size and describing kind of the use for it. It would be primarily housed at South Park and be used for those 2 ball fields primarily. We wouldn't use it on a daily basis to commute across town to use it on our other fields. We would still use the ATV style format we have for that, just for ease of moving it. But certainly this would fit on a trailer if we ever had a large tournament or a competition that we wanted to transport it to another site for, say, a weekend or a special event. We would trailer it to do it that way. So.
Mr. Demers.
Thank you. I guess you kind of answered my question, but do we have a trailer or?
Yeah, we do have an auto trailer that this would fit on.
Use.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the next item on the list. Reid Pell.
And this will take care of that bad lip at third base that causes so many problems?
Let's hope so.
Anybody else have any real questions other than Reid Pell's? See none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Number 6, consider becoming a GreenStep City. Mr. Hatcher.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just doing a follow-up from last fall session about the GreenStep City program. Again, just a little background. The program's available for Minnesota cities. It's between entities, the MPCA, Minnesota CERTS, the League, and other entities within the state of Minnesota. They work together to promote and fund this GreenStep City program. The goal of it, it's a voluntary program that lists practices and promotes quality of life and sustainability projects within your city. There's 133 total participants in the state of Minnesota. In our northwest region here, Crookston, Moorhead, Warren, and Detroit Lakes are involved with the program. Last Tuesday, I actually attended a 10-year anniversary of the event in Detroit Lakes just to kind of get feedback from other cities, other organizations. Talked with the assistant city manager, Dan Molly from Moorhead, former city of Crookston city administrator, about the program. Overall, it was quite a few positives. Talked about you're able to perform these tasks at your own pace. You don't need to, if you don't feel like you need to do, if you don't feel like, if you're not comfortable with these practices within the step 3 realm, to achieve that 16 best practices, you don't necessarily need to. You can stick at that step 2 phase. And basically, they also mentioned that these best practices are solely under our own control. We solely choose how much, if any at all, funding we want to put into this program. I've also included a letter from City of Warren, Shannon Mortensen. She just had a little bit of a take on the program as well, just so you guys can kind of see how the City of Warren feels about the program. And if there's any other questions.
Anybody have any questions?
First step is just pass the city resolution. So.
Mayor.
So we've tapped you to be our coordinator for this program if we go forward with it. So now what you know of it on a personal level, how excited are you about us being part of it? more than you as a staff person have been given the directive to pursue this and explore it, but personally from what you've seen, tell me about your enthusiasm for this project and why.
I'm completely excited for it, just to be involved with the community. Just something that, whether it's if we involve the community college or some parts of even high school, they're talking about even the implementing this program with local schools within the city as well. Just being able to contribute and set practices or plans on how we can improve quality of life in the city of East Grand Forks. I think that's what's really beneficial about this program, is having this step-to-step way of how our community can work together to achieve sustainability, quality of life.
Do you believe that it will make people want to live here or do business here? If you go well into implementation of this, does it make the community a more welcoming place for people to live or do business?
Absolutely. Well, I think, like, even with these best practices, we're doing a lot of these practices already. It's just a way to draw awareness of the practices that we are doing. You guys are even considering future plans with the renovation with the Civic Center or bike trails, things like that. That would be put into the GreenStep City program, and you would be recognized for it by MPCA.
Thank you.
Mr. Riepel.
We've already achieved some of these steps, right? We've got to start on it already.
Correct. For step two, when I was talking to Dan Molly from City of Moorhead, he even said himself that there's a lot of things that a lot of practices we've already done, like LED street lights, our flood control systems with the flood walls, and planting trees where we need to plant trees for spillways.
Anybody else have any questions?
I'm just,
Mr. Johnson.
thank you. I'm just wondering, you said about 130 some cities?
Yes.
Are out of 852? There's only 132 that are on this program. And how many years has this program been in effect?
10 years.
Just wondering why more of them aren't doing it.
A lot, and I noticed too on the map, it's a lot in the metro area. Like I said, in this northwest area, we do have Detroit Lakes, Moorhead, Warren, and Crookston.
Anybody else have anything at this time?
What's the benefit to our city for having it? I mean, if we're already doing these approaches and we're already taking initiatives, what's the benefit of being part of this program?
I'd say the nice thing about it would be having a step-by-step benchmarking or a guide of things that we could even maybe address where we don't even think about, that we can present to either the Commission of Water Light or even the City Council, things that are minimal cost, things that we can actually think about and address, and also the recognition of it. The city leaders here, we do a lot of things. We do a lot of things that, of course, locally people acknowledge, but I think statewide it would be nice to have that recognition. And thirdly, I think it's nice to put together a team or a committee to work together for our community. I think that'd be very nice.
Kevin, when I looked into it before, there was some funding available too. They provide loans and certain things for certain building projects if you can prove that you can show a cost savings in your electrical bill or those types of things if you submit into these practices. So what they'll do is they'll loan you the money to pay for the project, and then when you see the benefit of, where it starts evening out, where you're seeing a plus to it, then you can start using those funds that you're saving to pay back that loan. So it also doesn't come out of your budget. That's the way it was shown to me too. So if you do some roofing projects, or if you can do some electrical projects or things where it shows a benefit where you have a cost savings, then you're available for certain funding. So it does save the city some funds as well. So
Yeah, that's definitely a good point too, because I know in the city of Warren, they did, I believe, that they got some mini grant money for a project that they were doing with drones, where they do thermal imaging of establishments there to see cold spots within their city buildings, and where they are able to do specific projects within these city buildings to keep it as a more efficient, energy efficient establishment.
Anybody else have any questions or comments on this? Just so everybody knows too, this was brought to us here, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer. It was more in depth of what we discussed on and what it was all entailed on the project, and what our biggest questions was is it going to cost us money to do this? And I think that was one of the fear factors that came up right away is this something that's going to cost us money to do? And we went through all that process, you know, and talked about how we don't have to do everything. We can, like you said, go at our own pace, and if we don't want to do something, we don't have to. It's just recognition that we are doing most of these things already in certain phases, and that we have that recognition throughout the state, and hopefully we can acquire and get some loans that'll help us be more efficient too. So I think just want to make sure everybody knows this isn't just something we just threw at us today. It was something we went over extensively about 6 months ago. So.
And I notice in the later phases, it also gets into recommendations for private buildings, whether it would be residences, apartment buildings, businesses. Does anyone know if the loan money could be available also for private sector, or is it only available for public sector? If there would be loan money available.
I do not know that, but I can look further into it for you.
That would be interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially if we're going to our businesses and saying, hey folks, it'd sure be great if you do these green step things that would make your business more energy efficient. Oh, and by the way, you may qualify for some good interest rate loan money to get that done. And then, like you say, use the savings to repay it over time.
Anybody else have anything? I see none, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Number 7, review report of feasibility for reconstruction of 5th Avenue Northwest and 20th Street Northwest. Mr. Emery.
Thank you, Mr. President. So in your packet, we've included a copy of the report of feasibility for the reconstruction of the street and utilities on 5th Avenue Northwest and 20th Street Northwest. So basically, over the years, Jason and his staff have, done a lot of patching and stuff just to really maintain that road and keep traffic kind of flowing through there. But there's, many areas over there too where the curb and gutter is heaved and settled and stuff, and basically water's not even getting to the storm sewer system. So again, we looked at kind of a cost to replace not only the street but also the storm sewer system. We've also talked to Water and Light. I mean, if this project was to proceed, I think Water and Light would proceed with replacing their water main. And as you guys are aware, every year they do a water main replacement project, so I think we would just include that as kind of part of their annual water main replacement project. And there'd really be no cost there to the residents. And then as far as the sanitary sewer, would be very limited sewer replacement along that corridor. A lot of the sanitary sewer is kind of located in the back easements, alleys there, so a little bit of sanitary sewer work we would have to do. I think, again, we'd probably just look at taking that out of the sanitary sewer fund and not assessing it to the project. So I guess with that, the project would include removal and replacement of the existing storm sewer and catch basins along the corridor. I did, in my estimates, figure probably for the addition of a little bit of storm sewer and catch basins, just to make sure we're not having to run the water 3 city blocks to find a catch basin. So, and then along with that, when we cored the street out and stuff, we put in a drain tile system just to help dewater the subgrade, which I think would be a significant benefit. As we all know, along that north end, it's very wet up there. The subgrade is very soft. So I think the addition of a drain tile system up there would really improve the longevity of our streets. So, And then the street improvements, again, we'd remove the existing street section, sidewalks, driveways to the right-of-way. We'd core out the street, and right now, again, just because of the condition of the subgrade soils up there, I did figure about 10 inches of aggregate base. Typically under our residential streets, we go with 5 inches, but just knowing what we have up there, I went a little thicker. And then also included the installation of a geogrid fabric, which is just going to, again, give us some structural integrity, better structural integrity of that roadway. So then we'd look at, replacing with a 41-foot street, regular B624 curb and gutter, and concrete paving. And then we'd also look at, probably replacing all of the concrete sidewalk that's up there. Right now, there's kind of many areas up there too where we got gaps in the sidewalk system. Is just for whatever reason, I don't know if it's been tore out over the years. It was never put in initially, but when we're done, we'd have a complete sidewalk system there, connecting to adjacent sidewalks. So with that, the estimated total project cost for the drainage improvements, again, which is catch basins, storm sewer piping, drain tile, we're estimating about $272,810. And the estimated project cost for the street improvements is about $1,883,903 for a total project cost about $2.1 million. So of that, calculating the estimated assessment rates for that, the estimated assessment rate for the drainage improvements would be about 36 cents per square foot of property, benefited property. And the street assessments, again, like normal, we broke that into a front footage and an end benefit. Estimated costs right now for that are about $377 per front foot and $125 per end foot. And again, the end benefit is 1/3 the cost of the front benefit. So, and again, right now, all of these estimated assessment rates are, I guess, kind of following our current assessment policy. So 100% of the project costs are assessed. This is how we've calculated at this time. Next page of the report of feasibility is just kind of a listing of all the different subdivisions, lots, blocks, and stuff that would be potentially assessed with the project. I did include a map kind of showing the project area, showing what properties would, receive an assessment due to the street, storm sewer. So that's included. And then I did include kind of an itemized breakdown of the cost, of how we arrived at the cost for both the street and the storm sewer. And then the last thing I included is kind of a preliminary assessment roll with a breakdown per, per lot, per parcel of everyone that would be affected. So if you look at it, I was kind of looking at it before I came, and I mean, probably a typical lot width over there is about 75-foot lot. So a typical 75-foot lot, they got, let's say, a front and an end benefit for street improvements, and then also receive benefit for storm sewers. I mean, you're looking at about $41,000. So, very, very expensive. I mean, the one thing we've talked about a lot is the special benefit test. And again, that's kind of the increase in market value because of the project. So again, right now, the next step really in the overall process would be to move ahead with an improvement hearing. I don't know if that's the direction you guys are going to want to go yet at this point, or what?
It was my understanding that the direction was that the mayor asked you to put this together so you could bring it forth to them and say this is what it's going to cost, and that he would go to them and say, okay, do you guys want to do this? This is what it's going to cost you, and then ask that they sign off to do this.
Absolutely, right? And it would be initiated by a petition from those affected. So we'll basically, what I would offer to do is to conduct a meeting in their neighborhood, and if we had had such a neighborhood meeting without this information, we would say, do y'all want a new street? And they'd say, yeah, we do. How do we do that? Well, we would start into doing some of these things. But unfortunately, with that, we wouldn't have been able to do much at all in that meeting. Couldn't have even given them an idea.
Correct.
What are we talking about? So really in advance of having this conversation with them, I don't think any one of us really knew what would be the cost to take up and replace that street per resident. Now we have these good hard numbers. And I think the next step is a neighborhood meeting, give them the numbers. They can look at each individual family and how it would show up to their cost, and then make an informed choice. Do I want to sign this petition or not to take that next step? Or if there wouldn't even be maybe a neighbor there who would say, I will take up the petition drive, or a little nucleus of people. It'll really have to originate right in the neighborhood. And that's what we'll share with them, is that knowledge of, here's how the process works. Get the petition signed. And then to your special benefits test, I think the conclusion we've reached as a council is to say we would wait until such period ended where anyone could come back and challenge that, and then you'd know you could go forward and do it. That's, I think, the scenario that we're operating under right now. So I think this is perfect. You did exactly what we requested, and I would be very happy to participate in that meeting. I think in their neighborhood is the right way to do it, and then let them know, again, that this is the process, and it would start right here. Nobody in City Hall is saying y'all have to replace your street and y'all have to pay this money. This really starts with them saying we want this. We'd want to be equipped, and Jason and I have talked, and Steve, you could be part of it. We'd want to be equipped with a detailed account of what we've spent on those two corridors over the last, say, 5 years. We've been spending to patch those streets at a rate way beyond what we could sustain. Those streets really are past their usable life. All of the, as you say, the material below the pavement is breaking down, churned up water, sinkholes, all of that stuff. And because of that, we've basically tried to keep a very aggressive patching effort until we could decide what we were going to do with our street replacement policy. Well, we decided it's going to stay as it is, and we're going to try to go forward and use it the way that it is. Well, I don't see, and I think we've agreed that we can't continue to patch those streets at the rate that we have. We don't have enough money citywide to patch streets like that. So that's what brings us to that point. We've been more aggressive patching than we could sustain to get us to this moment, but now that street goes into more rapid decline if it's not replaced. Jason, would you agree with that also?
Yeah. Yeah, if we could show them what it costs over the last few years, like you said, at least it would give them a picture of that too.
Times the miles of streets we have in our city, yeah, way more than what we could sustain.
How many years do we assess these over again? Typically 20 years, I believe.
That's what sticks in my mind also.
I think we've done it like with that storm, you could probably break that down to a lower amount. I think, I'm just thinking about my own, I think my storm is like 10 years and then my pavement is like 20, so.
Everything.
The storm is like, it's a much smaller number.
Yeah. Do you have something else you want?
Yes. My turn. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll go back to my own memory, so it's definitely subject to critique. But when we replaced, or when we constructed Pioneer Court, which is just north of
the old FEMA Park.
Northeast or whatever, yeah, and then I believe 9th Avenue, which turns into 21st, kind of right by the park.
Nash Park.
Yeah, when we put those together, I think we ended up putting considerable amount of lime rock in those sections.
That's correct. We did put lime rock.
I'm just wondering, number one, should we have that spec'd in? I mean, I don't want to add cost to this project, but I also don't want to put a concrete road in that. I know you put the 10-inch section with the the 7-inch concrete. I just want to know, I want to make sure it's there and it stays.
You mentioned fabric too.
I think those ones had, but
it's a GeoGrid fabric. Yep, which gives you some structural benefits.
Basically keeps your aggregate from swapping places with the mud, right?
Correct.
It segregates the two layers.
Yep.
And it spreads the loads too, a little bit.
And,
So I guess
and
that
Mark-
would, my question is just, should we, knowing that in those two locations, and I don't remember if that was episodic, like, I know there was a big rain event in the Pioneer Court one, but like I said, we know what the soils are like, and you talked about that. I just want to make sure that we build it the right way.
But drain tile, did we have drain tile where we put the lime rock in then too?
I do not believe we have any drain tile in those subdivisions.
So would the drain tile do the job that you would need the lime rock then?
I mean, the biggest
lime rock. Oh,
yeah, I was going to say the biggest difficulty we've actually ran into in those subdivisions is just the constructability, being able to get the road constructed on those, poor soils or whatever. The reason I did the 10 with the geogrid fabric is when we redid the intersection of 3rd and 20th here 2 years ago. That's what we put in kind of for a section in that intersection, and knock on wood, everything's seemed to held up okay on that, so that's kind of why I started with that. But Mark is right. I mean, when we did do the Pioneer Court area and the Nash Park area, we did end up having to put in some lime rock just to get everything stable enough to even run equipment over it. So,
well, I guess part of my thing is if we know that that's a possibility, do it before it's a change order, so we know when we budget it. And because if we're talking about finalizing the bids and finalizing the assessment roll before we start the project, we know that this has got a potential for some, not explosive costs, but some pretty considerable costs, just like you said, for constructability and all those things.
Yep.
So if we're planning on going down the route of finalizing the assessment before, I don't want to come back and have a large change order item on the back end. That's my thought process. The other question I have is, should we allow, and I don't know how hard this is to put together, it shouldn't be terribly hard, but to put together a secondary item for an asphalt section if they choose that they wanted to go that route.
we could do that. I think the biggest thing would be kind of an educational component, because I think that asphalt section initially is going to come in cheaper.
Right, but
now you're going to have your maintenance every 10 to 15 years, whether it's a mill and overlay, seal coat, so. I mean, we could surely do that. We could bid it that way.
We always talk about how people make choices that they have concrete streets and asphalt streets, and I mean, I would prefer a concrete street myself, but this would be a time when people could actually choose. We hear that all the time. Yep. So,
if I'm not mistaken, you've previously set a policy where the city was gotten away from asphalt streets unless they were already constructed, and have specifically indicated that you're doing concrete streets. So that's something that you may want to address if you want to go there, and then understand you could have patchwork all over town based upon that. But
anything else, Mark?
Nope, not right now.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, I was down the road on all of this. There's mailboxes there, and if we put in sidewalks, will they qualify for them to get their mail to the house?
That's a post office question.
Yeah, typically, typically during construction, we'll either.
No, I'm talking about after construction. When it's all said and done with, if they go with sidewalks, new concrete, and this, can they get rid of their mailboxes and get their mail to their house?
I don't think
that's
a post sidewalk
question,
back?
yeah.
Are we putting sidewalk back in the existing? Like right next to the curb?
Where the snow pile?
We'd have to look at.
Where the snow pile is 4 feet higher right now?
We'd have to look at what our street right of way is there and our street width. I think there we have a narrow street right of way, and we have wide streets. We got 41-foot wide streets there. So would I like to get them away from the street? Absolutely, but we're gonna have to see what obstacles we have to, whether it's trees or fences or whatever else is in the right of way, because we don't have a lot of room there. But again, we got sidewalk figured in, so whether it's against the back of curb or 5-6 feet away from back of curb, I mean, cost wise it ain't gonna matter. So those are things we'd have to look at during the design phase, I guess.
Have you worked out any change to driveway aprons to accommodate the sidewalks?
We would, when we poured those driveways, we'd have to accommodate those sidewalks coming through, so you had that flat spot. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Emery, I understand the cost of the project, but can you explain to me the difference? I'm reading this here. What's the difference between the engineering fee and construction administration? What's the difference between them two?
So basically, the engineering fee is the cost to complete basically the topo work and the plans and specifications and all your, let's say, your bidding services. That's kind of your plans and specifications. Then your construction administration is includes your construction staking and also your construction observation, construction inspection. And then also any, I guess, project management type of stuff, shop drawing review, pay applications, any of that other stuff that I guess we kind of do on a daily basis.
So to oversee the project and everything, that's not included into the engineering fees?
What's that?
And to oversee a project like this, it's not included in the engineering fees at all?
Nope, that's included in the construction administration. So overseeing the project is in that construction administration number.
And we have 20th Street needs to work. I understand that fully, but I'm back to the same thing again here. We look at the construction, the subtotal construction cost at $1,460,000, but then there's another $420,000 in other fees on top of that that really drives the cost up, and that's the kind of things that I mean, it's maybe fees that have to be there, but
Yep. And right now, I mean, anytime we put together these preliminary estimates, I mean, I have on the street improvements, I have 10% contingency built in. And then on the storm sewer, I think right at this moment, we had about 15% contingencies built in. So, those are something, typically those amounts, hopefully once we get the project bid, we got a good set of plans, hopefully those contingency amounts, go down or eliminated. So, but I think it's good practice initially, because when I'm putting these together, I don't have a full-blown set of plans and specs. So I think it's good practice to, put in a contingency amount.
One thing that bothers me about doing that is that, I don't know, but in the past, anytime they put a number out there, it seems like it never really ever goes down. It just kind of stays there, or maybe even goes up a little bit.
I think I remember some projects we found some savings and the final assessment roll was lower than the initial. So it can go down. It can go down even 5–10%.
Have the contractor sharpen their pencil.
I guess I feel I'm not doing my job if I don't ask those questions, so that's why I ask them. So.
Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Demers?
Thank you. One last question. Do you think there'd be any appetite for changing that section from, reducing that section from a 41-foot section to?
I think that'd be a very good question when we had those neighborhood meetings, because typically our residential streets, we've either gone 41 feet or 34 feet. So we could narrow it up 7 feet. The beauty of that too is that would help us get that sidewalk too a little bit further from the back of the curb. So I think that's just a good discussion we could have with the residents. And I mean, it would be a cost savings.
I just think so. I mean, I know it's a kind of a arterial through there, but it kind of dead ends and so it's not a true arterial, but I bet it just, in some parts of it doesn't get the traffic that would necessarily need that 41. I know for snow removal and stuff, it's always nice to have more room, but I can anticipate people looking at this and saying, it's a lot of money. And we know that. We've done this a couple times now, So I'm just trying to anticipate where can we cut costs. And if it's moving to a bituminous, less upfront cost, higher long-term maintenance cost, maybe that's it. Maybe it's a road diet type thing where you're, bringing that in. I think we have to have some of those on the table. So I don't know if between then and now, you could work up some preliminary numbers for what those would look like as well.
Yep.
And that would also come from, I know our planning folks have something to say about, what is the category of street? And if it's a category of a collector, it has to be the wider, and if it's a category of more of a residential, it can be the narrower. So they probably would have something to say about the section width as well. So I guess for me, the direction we're looking for from the council then is to say, can we direct Megan, and she and I can try to coordinate a location. Maybe it is at the tech college, maybe it's at a church, but probably not. Maybe it's at Heritage Days somewhere, kind of a neutral venue close to where these properties are located. Megan would do a notification of all affected property owners, and she would also publish that it could be a quorum because the whole council would be invited, so we don't run afoul of open meeting laws. And so that would be the direction we would be looking for, is to be able to do that full notification of all the affected property owners. And thank you again for listing them out with good detail there. And so if everybody's on board, that would be the next step. And Megan and I can help to coordinate, of course, with you, Mr. Murphy, time and place and all of that to go to that next step.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Anybody else have anything? Thank you, sir. Number 8, discussion of proposed engineering contract. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excuse me. This is something that has been being worked on for at least several months. And when this was brought out, looking through this, it was determined that this would be a good time to really completely revamp the engineering contract. The one that we had been in place for quite a while. So with that being said, I enlisted the help of Jim Strawman. He's an attorney with the Kennedy and Graven. He specializes in construction law. He does quite a bit of that throughout the state, and he's known to be kind of the expert in construction law and in construction contracts for cities. So I enlisted the help of him on that. So we took a look at it really from the beginning. Through basically didn't really take any of the old contract and just started fresh based on what he's been seeing in the industry and recommendations that he's had, things that he's seen that have worked and have not worked in the past. With that being said, we put together a draft contract that actually was significantly shorter than our previous contract. It's not nearly as lengthy, but it gets to the point more. And it, in our opinion, protects the city more than our previous contract did. So with that being said, we've had several rounds of discussions and negotiations with WSN based on that. WSN has then put together a proposal, or did a proposal with, it's called the General Provisions for Professional Services Agreement, which I believe was 3 pages long in its original form. That took quite a bit of negotiation on that. In some of our final discussions here with City Attorney Galstad, he recommended that the 2 items be put together into one contract rather than having our contract and having the general provisions, I'll call it GPPSA, as a addendum. So with that recommendation, we have put those together. Actually, WSN initiated that. I did meet with Mr. Galstad here again earlier this week, trying to get this ready to give the final contract to you guys tonight for review. We were not able to do that yet at this point. There are 3 items that have been submitted to Mr. Strawman for his final opinion for approval, and there are a couple items in there in the GPPSA that Mr. Galstad has noticed are also covered in another provision of the contract, so we wanted to get that looked at as well. So what I will report is that for the majority of of all the major terms of the contract, I believe we are in agreement with WSN. However, the rest of this week, I will be working with Mr. Galstad, Mr. Strawman, and Mr. Emery there to put it in its final form. prior to the packets going out on Friday. We will work on it tomorrow morning, because unfortunately, I said I will be out at a funeral for Wednesday afternoon and probably all of Thursday. So we're going to try to get this done. I'm going to try to get this done prior to my leaving tomorrow. So if you have any questions about the general provisions of this contract, I can certainly answer those. We did take a strong look, Mr. Helms, and some of your concerns there as far as contingency amounts, and having contingency amounts be based on a per project basis, based on what the project looks like, and what the what we get for the construction oversight, assessment roles, those type of things. So that has been looked at in depth. And I think we are in agreement as far as what the industry standards are and what the majority of the cities have. And again, some tweaks on that based on Mr. Strawman's experience, having gone to trial on several construction contracts. So I will take any questions.
Anybody have any questions this time? I think it'd be good if you can get it out this week. If not, you're going to wait till the next work session, right, though? If you can't.
Okay.
If you can get it out, great.
Yeah, really it just depends on whether Mr. Strawman is able to get us his opinion prior to me leaving tomorrow.
Because if you can, I don't want to come into the council meeting next week and us voting on it without us having a chance to discuss it at a work session, not at
Understood. If I don't, if I don't have it ready by the time I leave tomorrow, then we will hold it till the next council meeting.
Because we're operating in good faith right now that.
Yeah. So, well, the way, and that's a good, the contract has technically expired. However, it continues on as written. So we still are operating under the old contract. One of the things that the contract as it was proposed in here was to go on indefinitely unless one of the parties requested that it be terminated. Again, I have spoken with our legal representation on that. I still am uncomfortable with that idea. I do like having a timeline where they end. That gives us an incentive to look at the contracts periodically and to potentially renegotiate them. So the way it looks now, that is one of the final items there. Would be most likely my recommendation coming forward for the approval that we do it for a 2-year basis.
I'm assuming you're bringing the attorney one too at the same time? The attorney contract too at the same time then?
We are working on that as well.
Yeah, Megan has reminded me on that. I'm working on a modification for her.
Lower your fee, right? Yeah.
Historically, with our engineer, was it a 2 or 3 year contract?
Typically, we've been doing 3 year.
What's the rationale, if I could ask, to maybe shorten that to 2 from 3?
It keeps the contract more in the forefront of our minds, and I personally believe that some of the changes happen more than that. I know in that 3-year contract, we've had a couple of items where we've had to clarify and meet to redo that as far as some of our fee schedules, the percentages and that. So personally, I think a 2-year timeline gives us more, it keeps our finger on the pulse of what's happening more, and it keeps us more up to date.
So the changes are that rapid that to go from 2 to 3, we might miss something, or
well, not so much miss something, but I think it, in my opinion, it keeps it more on our, at least on the city side, it keeps us more in the forefront of keeping track of items that we do have an issue with in the contract, or things that come up during the contract period that we feel would need to be modified at the next contract.
I look at the amount of time that we invest in every contract renewal, and by doing it 2 years versus 3, it's that much sooner that we're going to clog up your life for weeks on it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's the rationale for 3 year, is from a staff level, we don't clog you guys up as often.
Well, I appreciate that, and I do understand that. However, the reason this particular one took as long as it has really is for two reasons. Number one is we completely revamped it. We started from scratch. We didn't really take the previous contract and just look through it and make changes. We started from scratch. And unfortunately, I was out for 3 weeks during the negotiations of it, so it put us back a little bit further than I had hoped. I was hoping to have it done by the end of the year. Again, with the medical issue that we had, I just wasn't able to get to it. So I don't see when the 2-year contract is up and we're renegotiating next time, I don't see it taking nearly as long, because we'd be looking at it, as for any modifications for this current contract, we wouldn't be starting over from scratch like we did this time.
Thank you.
I would agree with David 100% what he said. I don't think the next time would be nearly as painful.
Thanks.
Somebody else have anything on that? See none. Thank you so much, sir. Review of updates to tobacco ordinance. Mr. Galstad.
A while back, we were, I think Chief Hedlund has suggested adding some type of an administrative part to this tobacco ordinance that we have. So what I ended up doing was I modified it. I mirrored it after the administrative penalty provisions of the liquor license as asked. The other thing that was done, if you go through it, federal law just indicated that the law to sell cigarettes, minors are now 21 as opposed to 18. So the age limit has changed. The other thing that I've included in here as a tobacco or a tobacco-related product would be electronic delivery devices for vaping, as well as nicotine solution products, which would be sold to minors. So that has all been included. I just, it's from my standpoint, it's updated. If there's any suggestions or questions or concerns after you review it, I'm planning on, after any comments, putting into an ordinance form and then bringing it forward for reading, et cetera, to change the actual code provisions as kind of indicated in the packet.
Anybody have any questions on that? Doesn't look like it, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Number 10, discussion on recreation facility projects and potential local sales tax. Reid.
Thank you again, Mr. President. Included in your packet tonight, I have given you all a first draft look at what we think some documents would look like to send to the state legislature should you all wish to move forward with any potential for a local sales tax or for a vote for a local sales tax coming up in the general election. So included in that, there's kind of some literature that explains some of the projects, explains economic impact, regional impact, and the financial summary, as well as a resolution, an example of what a resolution would look like. Carla's been very helpful through this whole process for me. Carla and I have been working very closely with Baker Tilly, the financial advisors, as well as Kennedy and Graven and the League of Minnesota Cities to kind of look at what this could all look like. Should you all want to move forward with it, we're still hoping to see back from Rogers, Minnesota. They sent to the legislature in 2019 some of these documents, and we're hoping to get our hands on what those looked like just to see if we're on the right wavelength still on that regard. But I think we're getting very close on that. So that's just as an example for you all to see what this could look like in the next couple of weeks here. And a bunch of more information on kind of the history of the projects we're discussing, what we have within our fixed asset program in what some of the facilities cost to install and some of the long-term improvements we made over the years on them to kind of see what kind of total investment we've had in these facilities that we're discussing. So kind of rounding all that out, I think the long-term thing or the big conversation tonight, what I'm hoping to get some direction from all of you on is it really, to me, it boils down to a couple of questions. And one is, you know, our first deadline in front of us here, we all know really well, is that by the end of January, if we intend to vote on something on a sales tax during our general election next November, we need to notify the state tax committees at the legislature of our intent to do that by January 31st. So that's the first deadline in front of us. I'd love to get some direction from all of you on, number one, do we want to have a vote for a local sales tax at all? That's, I think, the first question. If the answer to that question is yes, then of the 4 projects that are submitted, do we want to include, as I've drafted for you all so far through this packet, do we include all 4 projects in that mindset, or is it some form of something less than those 4 projects? And ultimately, that all kind of narrows down to what project amount or dollar amount would you all like to consider. You know, in conversation the last few weeks through all of this, it's been asked of me at department head meetings in the last couple of weeks, you know, what's your recommendation to the council if they ask for a recommendation? I think my general, if that question is asked of me, and I'm going to give it to you now, is I think that from a recreation standpoint, a Parks and Recreation standpoint, I think we have 4 projects in front of you that all are going to be the number one importance to a certain user that uses recreation facilities in our community. It may not be that everybody wants each of them, but I think that there's a user out there that we've heard from or that we've talked to that feels that each of these is of the utmost importance to them. And I don't know exactly if I have a recommendation come next November, if each project or a couple of the projects or only one of the projects should be included for a vote at that time. I don't know that any of us necessarily have that answer yet at this point. I don't know if our residents 100% have that answer across the board, but I think that my gut instinct right now is that we should take the next step in the due diligence to move the 4 projects forward so that we can continue to vet out the process, put our diligence into it with the stakeholder community meetings to continue to hear from our residents about what a sales tax increase would mean to them, whether that be for themselves personally or for a business that they either work at or operate. And really, between now and when we would have to submit these final ballot questions in August 4th would be the deadline we would have to submit a final ballot question, be able to answer that question with more clarity by that time. So that's a kind of a quick synopsis of my mindset to it. Certainly open to any questions you guys all would have on any of it to this point.
I think, just speak for myself, I think the proper thing we need to do is move forward with these items to the legislator at the end of the month. And then from that point on, we move forward and, as you indicated, have these meetings and have these discussions and have the input from the citizens and allow them at the end of that time period submit what we hear back from the citizens. And at that time, we move down to November, we give them the opportunity to vote on it. Not just us saying what's going to happen or not going to happen. Allow them the proper, information to be given to them and time to speak and ideas. I think that's what we need to do. We don't need to stifle that, no, we're not going to do this. We need to allow the process to move forward and the process of the citizens to be able to voice their opinion. I know a lot of them have sent emails, a lot of them have stopped people at stores or whatever, reached out on the phone, and I think what I'm seeing is people want the right to be able to vote on this. I know that we discussed this, if let's say we get down to the point where there's all 4 of them on there, they each have to be a line item, correct? Separately.
Correct.
So everybody has their voice of what they want to do. So I think that's what from my opinion, that's the way I look at it, and that's how I want to do it. So, Chad.
I totally agree. If you take a look at the facilities that we have, and you look at the projects that are listed, you go to the Civic Center. Yes, we've put some money into the Civic Center because we kind of had to put some money into the Civic Center. We are now looking at, you know, those plants and those systems could go tomorrow. And then where are we going to come up with that money? So I'm a little worried about that. But the whole project, I think, I agree with Mr. Olsted saying that we've got to let the people decide how they want to go after this. The locker rooms at the Civic Center are terrible. They're absolutely horrible, and it's absolutely embarrassing when we have to put teams in those locker rooms that are just way too small for what goes on in this day and age. Our baseball field, let's face it, has not changed very much other than we put a backstop up, some bleachers, and yeah, we've got people working on that thing, but that hasn't changed since I was 5. Let's just face it, we put another field facing the other direction. It's still there. I mean, the building that's still there needs to be gone. That whole building, the old Stalls Park warming house, is probably, if we don't get it going, it's going to be a historic building, because and then we're really going to be in trouble. I mean, and then you look and we look down at the park. We look where that boat ramp is. We've talked about someone, and then that's the other part about it. We need to go after those people that promised us a boat ramp, and we have not got that boat ramp. And I mean, yes, the DNR are our so-called friends, but how friendly have they really been to us? I mean, we're dumping money into that campground, and we're doing the things, and they're making the benefits. So I think sometime they've got to come back to us as well. And we're spending all kinds of money and time on that system, the trail system, with 3 guys. You think about that. Our park and rec system is running on about 3 or 4 guys that are full-time, that are required to clear out all of those miles and all of those things. And then we have whatever the amount that we're taking in on our water and light bill to fix that. So I think a year, right? That doesn't, you can't spend $47,000 to put a curb in. How are we going to fix those things? So I think we need to let those people say what they want to say, have them come in and voice their opinion. Either way, I've talked to more people that are for it than are against it. So that's where I'm at.
One thing I want to mention too, and I know Mr. Murphy wants to speak here too, but we have to vote on this next week. We have no other meetings. So keep that in mind with everybody here, that we need to, tonight, we need to make the decision what we're doing. And because after that, we won't have any other meetings unless you call a special meeting. Mr. Murphy, you have something? Yeah,
I just wanted to make a comment. Hopefully, some of you as council members were able to listen to the Jared Thomas show this morning. Mr. Huttunen was on the radio this morning and took some questions. They didn't get, I don't think you got any phone callers. It was more email.
No, a lot of text questions.
Text questions, yeah. And that came in. In my opinion, Mr. Huttunen did a fantastic job of answering those questions and dealing with Mr. Thomas and the questions that he had for that. So in the text questions that came in, I thought were very good and very valid. So it actually did seem like people, the ones that did text in, were fairly well informed about the process and the project and what was being put forward on that. So I would like to keep Mr. Huttunen out in the forefront, talking to people about this and getting some of that out there. And I think he did the point of why I wanted to make in this is that I think he did a very, very good job explaining to Mr. Thomas and getting it out there on the radio that a fairly large portion of this project that absolutely needs to go will not be seen by the public. meaning with the updating of the cooling systems, and that's all back behind closed doors, and that's a large chunk of this, and the public will not see that. However, it's probably the most vital part of it. So I just wanted to make my comment that I think he's done a fantastic job of getting some of that out there.
Mr. Vetter.
Thank you. My question is, if we submit these projects to the state, I'm wondering how much leeway do we have to change them once we have public input? We've already, thank you for sending out the emails, but the one gentleman said, why don't we tear down the Blue Line Arena and the VFW Arena and build something new there and just fix up the Civic Center, not have 2 sheets there, have the 2 sheets down, but make them more usable down there. That sounded reasonable to me, but have we even explored that option? The LaFay Park, yes, we have a master plan, but after we looked at that, I did have a gentleman that came in and said, why don't we just dredge it all out so you can drive boats in there, and then you don't have the wave action and the current of the river to be able to load your boats and all that, and that made sense. So if we send these projects as they are down to the state and the state approves them, do we have leeway then to change the project substantially once we get public input?
That's a great question. Carla, if you please jump up. You've been talking with Kennedy and Graven much more than I have. Just my quick thought on it before Carla adds anything is that that's probably something, Mr. Vetter, we should look at in this draft document of the literature that I put together to make sure that the language describing the projects is generalized enough that we can do that. That's been a key point that Kennedy and Graven has had through it, is making sure the resolution part of it is very specific to keywords like either construction, renovation, rehabilitation. They're looking for those specific words, and I think if we leave it general enough that it either says construction or renovation and expansion or rehabilitation of LaFave Park, that would leave us to have that flexibility within the dollar amount we would have approval for to make those design changes. But please, if you can add.
Yeah, and that's exactly correct. In fact, the resolution that you got, I did send it to Kennedy Graven, and she actually crossed it all off. Because we were too specific.
Yeah.
Because what we did was we had taken off, that first one we worked with, and she, tore it apart, which was wonderful. And she said, we don't want to get that specific. And then, even for example, on the ballparks, when we talked about that, yes, we're looking at doing a softball diamond also, but it might not be at the same park. And the way we had written it, it talked like it was all going to be in the same area. So we, juggled that around a little bit. And so now what we're going to have to do is that we're going to have to go from the resolution to these documents, and she's going to work with us on these documents and the bill that we would send to the legislature. So she will put that together for us.
Is that Ms. Eddington that you're working with?
Gina.
Oh, okay.
So, no, perfect, great question, because that's what we've been worried about too, is that we don't want to be totally specific. The other thing may be is that, may want to do that, and you have somebody that wants to donate lots of money, so that we could actually even do more with it, that we wouldn't be set right to that. So she is working with us, she's given us some really good suggestions, and we're tweaking that.
Mr. Demers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Question, when you look at the bond schedule, the 25-year bond schedule at a 2%, you end up with $32 million, and the total project with P&I is 36. Is there an assumption that there's going to be, I talked in the past about 3 legs to the stool of, there could be 4 or 5 legs to the stool, but are we anticipating filling that gap with $4 million of outside funds, or is there a plan for that, or?
Well, actually, the bond that we're looking at is at 32 million, and the projects are at 32 million.
Well, this says 36 for the P&I. 36,
Oh,
390.
So that's project specific. There's
Yeah.
4 separate projects.
And we're a little confused on that because it's all new to the legislature, where in the past you could say we're taking out a $32 million bond, and that, that the sales tax will cover the bond plus interest, and they never had to put that amount in. So in the past, we would just say the project's cost are $32 million, that sales tax are going to cover the project cost and any interest, any financing costs. And now, according to the legislature, they're kind of wanting that. And so, like I said, we're working with Kennedy and Graven on how do they specifically want that. So we put that in there as a starting point, so she can look at it, she can tear apart, she can look with the resources she has, maybe even talk to some of the legislature on what the bill is supposed to look like. And that's how it would set in the resolution. If you look in the resolution, it said, I know what would be the payback time. And so that's what we guesstimated. We guesstimated according to the dollar amount and the length of the bond, how much interest would come out of each one. So that is a questionable item of how we're going to speak that on there.
Okay, because, yeah, I want to make sure that
if you look, Mr. Demers, at that debt service schedule you brought up.
Yep.
Like the fifth column from the left to the right.
Yep.
That's total P&I.
Yep.
So that's where our total P&I revenue at the end of this, if you did all 4 projects, that's the bottom number. So not the 32 million, it's the 48.
So there's 48, and then where's our sales tax?
There's a different page that would have the revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the coverage ratio, or no?
Yes.
So that would be so that's longer, that's a 30-year.
And the reason for that is that it's all a guesstimation. And usually when they do the sales tax, the length is 30 years. And so even with the pool, even though we said, we thought the payback would be in 5 years, if you look at the language, it says either payback or 30 years, whichever comes first. And so I did ask her about it because at one point in the resolution, it talks about when you think the payback would be. And we're saying, well, I think what the payback would be in 25 years. And so there's kind of confusion because, and one part of the resolution says 25 years because that's what they're asking. But then the other part of the resolution, we put down 30 years because if the sales tax were to drop, then we might need that 30 years to collect it. So, I'm sorry if we sound ambiguous because it's so ambiguous because of the new legislature. And we're really working with Kennedy Graven and Baker Tilly. They're working diligently with us. They're getting back to us very quickly with answers so that we get it right. Like I said, Kennedy Graven is going to write the bill. And it has to be in by January 31st. But the session does not start until February 11th, I think.
Right.
Thank you. 25 years 30 years is a long way to predict out.
It is.
So, I've said it before, I'm definitely in favor of these projects. I need to flesh out kind of some of my fears. My fears, some of it, when you bond out 30 years, what are the opportunity costs? What kind of things in between now and 30 years could we miss out on? Because, I haven't gone away from the 2% tax. I think we could get there, but just at 2%, you're kind of capped, right? If you talk to the mayor, it's probably capped out at 1%, but like 2%. You're probably maxed out for what you can go back to. So for 30 years, our hands are kind of tied for additional revenue streams. Well, there's always some way to get credit, but the ones that are traditional revenue streams that we'd be looking at. So that is something that we need to be a little bit leery of. Like I said, these buildings, these facilities are kind of our core recreational facilities. But like I said, it's just something we should be aware of. Second of all, I was kind of actually a little bit happy because I thought that gap was kind of a signifier of that we were going to have some additional funding or some additional resources. And I wonder how it's going to play as we go down to the legislature. When you look at who did you say it was that you're going to look at their proposal?
Rogers, Minnesota.
Did they have any private funding? Did they have any, match kind of things that they were looking at? Because, are they gonna ask us to put kind of some of our money where our mouth is, or ask for what's the support within the community, before they even get to a vote. And, those are the type of things that I think we will end up having to discuss, but I think without the pressure of that gap, it kind of goes away. You know what I mean? Like, if you say, well, we're going to go 2%, we're going to get this done, it's going to cover everything, all of a sudden those other funding sources don't have any pressure, or, to fill that gap. And I think it's a hard thing. I mean, in the past, the original construction of these was done through a lot of sweat equity and, personal donations and those type of things. We've done things at the library. When the library was built, there was a large, private partnership that came together to put that thing together and raised a lot of money. And I think we need to have that as part of our project. I don't want to say, okay, we're going to raise this much, this 2% for 30 years, and then we'll do this extra gravy that we want. It's got to be on the front end, you know what I mean? And like I said, I'm fully in support of going down this route. I want to make sure that we've got this all kind of fleshed out before we do it.
I think we need to make sure that in order to get people to do something like that, we've got to have the backing of this group. I mean, people come out and say, I'm going to do this, but if we don't support it and we don't get it going, they're not going to step up to the plate and say, well, they haven't stepped up and said they're going to do this.
Right.
So I think by passing this and getting this going, we could possibly then start with progressing on to what we need to do to get people in line. That's my feeling. But we can add what ifs and what ifs and what ifs all the day. I mean, it's just going to be a...
Mr. Vedder. Thank you. Carla, just as the project is kind of flexible, or that's what we're working towards, the sales tax rate, is that flexible also? We're using 2% now, but is it going to be flexible enough where we can say 1% so that there is that extra that we might have to pick up somewhere else? Also, if we go 2%, we're significantly higher than Grand Forks sales tax, and that worries me also. 1% gets us pretty close to Grand Forks.
2%, well, the legislature says that you can, if we put it in the 32 million at 2%, and say we come back in June and we have $10 million, we could put to a vote 1.5%. It's just that when you round the numbers at 1%, all we could get for construction dollars is $17 million for the length of the bond, which can only be 30 years. And so that, that's why we looked at the 2%. But it's just like the levy, when we do our preliminary levy. You can't go up, but you can come down. And so this is where we're at. We can, can send what we want to the legislature at the cap of what we want.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
And with Baker Tilly's and the projections with the 2%, 1.5%, and 1%, they didn't do any inflations. It was the same revenue stream for 30 years, so we know that that's going to go up. So if we do 2%, we might have a huge increase. It might get paid off in 20 years then because inflation. So we may be able to get by with 1% and still pay it off in 20 years or 30 years because of the inflation adjustment anyway.
The only problem with the 1% is they won't give us the bond. For this, they won't give us a bond over 17 million.
For the full project.
Yes.
And
So what we'd have to do is a 2%, and we'd be done in 15, 20 years. And you're right, we don't have inflation dollars, and, all the work that Reid has done with the visiting bureaus that, they're talking about how regional impact and how people will come in, we would expect our sales tax to go up because of events
Or
at
we
these
do the
facilities.
1%, and then we've got the justification to go to other sources and say, this is a shortfall that we're looking for to be able to make up and do this project.
And we couldn't do that. My suggestion would be, let's do that in March, after we've gotten the state to approve this and that. But yes, that is a direction we could go.
Ben Mayor, sorry.
We're talking about a tax rate, which is a sales tax rate, and we're talking about 1%, 2%, and it doesn't sound like a lot of money. 1%, 2%. It's only 1%, 2%. of all the sales, of all the taxable items in our jurisdiction, and including internet sales. 1%, 2%. Well, at 2%, it comes to close to $2 million annually. And that 2%, which is close to $2 million annually, is close to 40% of our general tax levy per year. That's the kind of dollars we're talking about dedicating every single year for the next 30 years for this project. Let's call it what it is. It's $2 million, which is close to 40% of our general tax levy today, dedicated to recreation. And I love recreation. I believe I spend probably almost as much time on those trails as anybody, and I love what's happening down at our waterfront, and it's the logical piece of the puzzle to pay attention to, Lefebvre Park. I love all of these projects, but I think we have a responsibility. You know, we're talking about our people put a lot of trust in us, and they want us to bring forward a recommendation that we can stand behind and say, this is a good one. We're doing more than just laying out options for them. We are also putting our little stamp of endorsement on it, saying this is a sensible move. We've looked at the revenue, the expense, the benefit that it'll bring. It's a sensible move. And that's basically what this group will be doing. But I do challenge us to think beyond 1 or 2% and take a good hard look and say 2% today, 2 million, close to 40% of our total general levy. And it's committed annually every year for 25, probably 25 years if you look at the amortization schedule. And I do think tax revenue will go up over the years, so probably closer to 20. It's still a long time to dedicate that percentage of our total tax levy for the purpose of recreation. So I really do challenge us to have that perspective and really also to create that scenario where we can do naming rights. I know I'm a broken record, but naming rights and all of the other things that'll bring some additional revenue into the project to really reduce the load on our taxpayers. The number is, and just so in full disclosure, when you do a sales tax, probably half of it comes into our community, half of it comes to the outlying area. So it's not our direct full tax load to our local residents, but that's part of the equation as well. And it is a regional benefit, so it makes good sense to have that view. But that's my view of it. I'm embracing it. I'm letting it go step by step as it goes along. I understand whatever we approve is the top limit, and then we all have a chance. The whole community has a chance to drill down and say what are our priorities and what are any other funding sources we can come up with. But please don't think 1 or 2% because this is real money. Thank you.
Mr. Ellis.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The problem that I have with this whole project, I've said it before, is we're talking about 1 to 2% sales tax, and we're going to spend $32 million. Okay, so we were going to pay that back with the sales tax. So 20 years down the road now, we're back into the same boat as Mr. Grassel said. We're going to be kicking the can down the road again because now we got a nice facility we got to do some more work to. 2 years down the road after this thing is done, or probably even before that, probably before the thing is done, we're going to be hiring more employees to run this thing because we ain't going to have enough help. How are we going to get the money to pay for all that? What's going to happen is the sales tax is going to go through. If sales tax goes through to build this thing, now the next thing that the council is going to be doing that following year is we're going to be raising property taxes again to help pay for everything. And that's where the problem is at. Recreation is great. I love it too. I played softball for 50 years. I love it. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not so sure that, I mean, I think we're shooting. Grand Forks has got what, 5, 6, 7, 8 rinks over there, and they got ice time all the time. You can get ice time over there whenever you want it. So I'm not so sure that spending this kind of money for this stuff, and I've told you before, Lefebvre Park is another issue. Just think if we had done that now, we'd have lost Lefebvre Park 3 times this year. 3 times in 1 year, we'd have lost that. We'd have wasted $2.6 million. We can do other things to beautify this and make things work. I just don't know that because what I'm hearing going on out there in the community is property taxes, and don't get me wrong, you guys know it as well as I do, they're going to go up. If we build this thing, it's like it's like what do they call that place over at the university they tore down and built new again? All the seniors voted to build this thing, and then they're out of school now and leave everybody else to pay the bill. I just think that we need to think a little bit deeper on this. As the mayor said, we need to, I mean, if it, you know what, if it goes to a vote and they vote for it, I guess so be it. It is what it is, but I think we need to look at it really hard. And then one more comment I want to make is when this letter is drafted, or this thing is drafted to send down to the state, I don't want it to say in that letter that the citizens of East Grand Forks are all in favor of this. I don't want to say that because that's not true yet. Yeah, there's a lot of people in favor of it, but I don't want you to send a letter to the state saying that we need you to approve this because the citizens want this. I don't want to see that on that letter because that's not the way it is. So that's my point.
And I'll say this, if we don't start doing some of the things that we need to do, we aren't going to have kids to put in the recreation, and we will be adding more to our current tax base to people because we won't be getting the people coming to our community. We won't be getting those people that want to come to East Grand Forks. So we have to be careful. And we have to go back and look at the past and what we did in the past of all the things. We got a building sitting right back here that we dumped almost $250,000 into because we kept, we'll throw some more rubber roof on it and we'll fix it. Then now it's leaking and now we're throwing. We've got to get beyond that, and we've got to think outside the box, and we got to move forward. We can't keep thinking about all of the, again, we're thinking about the what ifs and the what ifs. I think we got to move forward. And this is one of the biggest projects that we have since the flood that has come before us that is going to be very, very important for our community. Citywide, from 90 years old to 100 till whoever can get into that VFW arena and use that multi-purpose facility, to the baseball fields, to whatever. That's the strong feeling I have. And there's a lot of people, and I know there's people sitting in this room that have that same feeling about that because it's what's best. We can't just keep, I don't know, that's just my feeling. So,
Mr. Riopel, sorry, I forgot you earlier.
All right, I can wait. Just a reminder that if we do nothing, we do not do the sales tax, we're still going to be tapping the taxpayers' property taxes for the repair of the VFW and the Civic Center, which is going to cost us a lot more in the long run. And that's just the basic stuff. If we have to do, there's other things I believe we have to do because we go over that threshold of dollar amount, what we're doing. That's stuff that's going to create a lot more down the line for us. And there's only one way to pay for that. Our sales tax thing, we'll be off the books for what, 2 years before we can apply again?
Yeah.
So one of these systems is going to fail. I have no doubt. And we're going to have to replace it. And taxpayers are going to be a lot less happier when it comes out of their property taxes because it's going to cost us a heck of a lot more money. Just a reminder on that.
Carla?
Thank you. Just a couple of things. We talked about repairs and that to the facilities. You know, we do have the $250,000 we get from Water and Light. That's worked wonderfully. Our buildings are probably in the best shape they've ever been because we replaced the heating and the air conditioning. So, you know, besides a few roofs here and there, I know Gary's looking, and it's not something that's ripe yet, but in a couple years, but we have it in there in our budget. So those kind of repairs that we are doing now weren't done in the past. And so we've been playing a lot of catch up to get those buildings where they are now. And I know when you talk to the department heads, most of them will say, my building's in good shape, except for Reid. And that's what we're here for. So the other thing I have is that with Baker Tilly, we talked about if the sales tax does not go through, or we choose not to do it. So how much money could we actually bond for with just property taxes? So we could do a tax abatement bond, which gives, we can only have, the 20 years is a restriction on abatement bond. And that has to do with our net tax capacity. So the maximum amount that they would allow us to have a bond would be $15,360,000 over 20 years. And then the property tax increase for those 20 years, I have documents that I'd like to share with you on that. So the example would be if your estimated value in your home was $250,000, the additional tax for the next 20 years will be $335 on your tax, just for that abatement.
Annually?
Annually for 20 years. So you can look on here and find out where your home is.
$70 a month at 20th Street.
Dave, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, as far as addressing Mr. Helm's point, as far as what the letter would be, I guess we wouldn't know what the citizens' opinion would be on that yet. That's part of what the vote would be for. What we would be putting in any letter that we send to the legislature would be what the council vote is, that the council voted to support this project and to put it before the voters to see whether or not it's something that they would want to support. So we wouldn't be putting in there that the community as a whole would be supporting it, because you're right, we don't have any documentation on that. We don't have any way to back that up. What we'd be doing is that the council is in support of it and is in support of putting it before the voters to see if it's something that they are willing to pay for.
Mr. Demers.
Thank you again. I just wanted to continue on my where I was going. You know, I made the comment that 25 years or 30 years is a long time, and it's hard to kind of figure out what our needs are going to be, what our fiscal position is going to be, and those are the worries that I have. And like I said, the opportunity cost. But on the other hand, we can see fairly clearly what 5 years down the road is going to be, and we know, to Mr. Riopel's point, Mr. Grassman's point, is that we are facing some major costs, or just discontinuation. And to me, and I don't think there's anybody out here that wants to just discontinue programs. So, I mean, we know that there is some big costs coming up. And that was really the genesis of these discussions, was we know that this is coming out. We know that we have to do something. If we're going to do something, why don't we do something that enhances rather than just keeps us at the status that we're at? You know, the other thing I think we know in the next long thing is that money probably isn't going to be as cheap as it is right now or around this era. You know, there's a good possibility in 15 years that money's going to be way more expensive. So when we get to, you know, replacing or doing any of these bigger projects 10 years down the road, you know, think that a 2% sales tax wouldn't even touch it, you know, to get that kind of financing. So, like I said, I have a lot of fear and trepidation, and I don't think you go into one of these projects without that. I know I've talked to Reid a lot of times about this, and it's like, this type of decisions are hard to make, and I guess that's the way we make the big bucks around this table. But I think it is these are great projects. They will only enhance our city, and like I said, I think in previous conversations I've said these will be the things that differentiate communities, especially in this area, where people, like Chad said, where people will want to go, where they will want to live, where they will want to come, even if they don't live. You know, these are the type of facilities, these are the type of things that people will want to do. And like I said, and the mayor's right on, it's costly. It is expensive. But sometimes you got to make the investments, you know, in where you're most beneficial. I think this is one of the biggest assets the city has. Like I said, I wasn't ever a hockey player, so, you know, I'm not saying this because I'm, you know, I'm anticipating my kids being hockey players or anything. I know that I'm in touch with what our community is. We're a winter community. This is part of our culture. I mean, this can be something great, I think. But I think the biggest way to make it not great is to really start, like Chad said, is, you know, what ifs and all that, and really start cutting the corners. You don't want to make it gilded. We don't need to have, we don't need to have the Ralph Engelstad Arena over here, but it's got to be good. It's got to be worthy of East Grand Forks, and I think we should move forward with it, so.
Mr. Helms.
Another comment, the 1 to 2% sales tax, we could still do that and fix what we have. Our parks, what do we have, 18 parks in city of East Grand Forks? I'm just guessing, Reid?
14. 14 parks.
We got 14 parks in the city of East Grand Forks, and those parks have been updated, playground equipment, whatever else. There's not a one of them that's ADA compliant, not a one of them. We have a lot of things that we've never done, and we're going to go and start a new venture. Why does this council never talk about, we always talk about bringing this stuff, bringing in this thing so people want to come here. Why don't we ever talk about, let's put our heads together and figure out how we can get some business into East Grand Forks. Let's talk about getting businesses here to help pay for this stuff. That might be a better solution than just going out and raising taxes and spending money. I mean, the emails I see, we get, okay, yeah, we bring in 255 families and they spend money here. Well, I'm sorry, but those 255 families are not staying in East Grand Forks. There's no way one hotel is going to hold them. Where are they spending their money? Across the river. So is it really benefiting us that much? Let's put our heads together and figure out how we can get some business in here and fill some of these empty buildings and stuff we have here. That's what's going to bring people to East Grand Forks, is get some retail and stuff here. That's all I got to say.
I guess as we go through the process, I've talked to a lot of people about this too, and there have been several who've said, take what we have and make it facilities that we're really proud of. Take what we have and make them fully ADA compliant, make them nice. We're really, really proud of them, bringing tournaments in with the facilities we have. So that's still, the sentiment is out there, it's resonating. I'm not saying it's the right one or the wrong one, but I guarantee it's out there. And I feel like they're just at least open your mind to everybody at the table, to all of our residents in the room. Open your mind. What would that look like if we were going to bring in some amazing air handling equipment into the locker rooms, expand them out on the Civic Center to the west? What would we do over at the VFW to make it something we're really proud of, interconnected maybe to the Blue Line with a common area with a little fireplace and people can hang out? These things aren't terribly expensive to add functionality to what we have, just as an option. So please, everybody, also keep your mind open as the conversation goes. That might turn out to be another option worth taking a look at.
What I'd like to do is, if anybody in the audience wants to make some comments, if you want to come up to the microphone, state your name and your address, I would appreciate it. You've made the effort to come to the meeting and show your support or not support, whatever.
Hi, I'm Marla Wolf. I live at 2132 11th Avenue Northwest. I have been a resident of East Grand Forks my entire life. I was one of those kids I was a senior in high school when the arena opened. I was a cheerleader, hockey cheerleader, so because there was no girls hockey. So I was one of the first kids on that ice. I was the first graduating class through the arena. And I personally feel it's my job to give back to this community, to keep it going for the generations to come, because I was very fortunate to be there. And because somebody did it for us. And then the VFW, I remember when those dads worked on that. A lot of us remember that.
Brick by brick.
Brick by brick,
Yep.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And well, you remember that too, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
My father-in-law was out there just with the rest of the gang.
Yeah, they all were. Every dad, every service group, everything. But now we do have to keep up. And yes, I am getting older. And yes, I get it. When you're in those arenas, it's tough when you're getting older. But also looking at what could be for me, my family that will be coming up, but for me for the next 20 years at these arenas that I can still go to, or the VFW as a multi-purpose building. I want to be proud. I do not want a bandage approach. I worked in a bandage approach. It was bad. I can't say that publicly. but.
Just sort
You
of
just did.
I know, I just sort of did, but.
You can watch it tomorrow too.
No, don't, yeah. But we have to do it right. We have to invest in our future. Thank you.
Lisa?
My name is Lisa Brown. I live at 2225 9th Street Southeast, and I've lived here my whole life also. I think what we have at hand right now is that we have to make a decision tonight, because we have to have something to legislation, and at the 1%, we don't have enough money. And that's the Band-Aid approach, I believe, from my understanding. So we almost have to go with the 2% and hope that we can come in under the 2%. We have to ask for the 2% and hope that we can spend less. And I think that that's where we, as citizens, get to vote on what the projects that we're going to do. And if it's less than the 2%, then we spend less than 2%. Can it work that way? I don't know. But we have to ask for enough, otherwise we're going to end up increasing property taxes because we're going to have a failure at the Civic Center or the VFW or both. And then it's going to be on the taxpayers, and we're not going to have a vote. It's going to be on us. So, and I think that we would lose a lot of citizens in East Grand Forks if our property taxes continue to go up like that. Property taxes on a $250,000 home, Carla, you said was 600 and some.
With 335, a $400,000 home, 450 was like 635.
That's extremely. That's a lot of money. And we can't afford it. I mean, we've talked about this at other meetings, we are middle-class citizens here. We can't afford property taxes to go up like that. I think that 1 to 2% tax increase, it's spread amongst not just us here in East Grand Forks, that it's spread out around the communities. Yes, I would like to see more businesses in East Grand Forks. And that needs to be worked on also, but I think that's a separate issue. So I think that we need to make some decisions to continue to make our town good, great, and fix the things that need to be fixed before we're in a bind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak at all?
If I may just wait, one thing is that I know that everybody that's here is probably understanding that this is a this isn't an increase on a property tax, but if you talk to the general public, a lot of times they're still confused about that. And I think that's one of the things that we really need to put forward is some clarification that this is a sales tax, that it's not an increase in property taxes, because as soon as you bring this up, the first thing that somebody says to you is they can't raise my property taxes anymore. You start explaining that it's not a property tax, that it would be just based upon sales that are taxable sales, you get a whole different outlook from a lot of people as soon as they understand that it's spread out a little bit differently. And so, not saying I'm for or against, I'm just saying in the information that goes forward, I think that that's one of the things that continually has to be emphasized, because a lot of people are just looking at the broad brushstrokes and they're not listening to the details, and they just don't understand that.
Ben.
So I'm Brandon Baselig. I live at 1508 Park Drive Southeast. I'm a citizen, but I'm also the president of ISD 595 School Board. I want to talk a little bit about most certainly myself as a citizen in support, but also the school board being in support of the 2%, or at least going to the legislature with 2% and then working on that process on dwindling it downward, donations, what have you. The problem that we're going to run into, Mrs. Anderson just gave the one with an abatement bond at 15 years. You look at 15,000 or 15 million that's available at a 15-year, or excuse me, a 20-year abatement bond. And Mr. Helms, you talk about bringing businesses into the city. Nobody's coming. There's no way. You look at commercial industrial. Look at a $3 million building. You know, that's high on their tax rolls. So that's going to be very difficult, you as a council or my school board trying to get people, individuals into this city. The tax base, or what funds a school district, is the people that go to school here. So no different than our citizens of East Grand Forks, we're paid per pupil. So if we start seeing people, okay, we're going to do a Band-Aid method. Everybody's been using the Band-Aid method tonight, so I'm going to use the same thing. You do a Band-Aid method, and then at some point in time, all this stuff lines up, and hey, we got to spend this, we have to spend this. So council's going to have no choice but to raise property taxes or do this abatement. And then eventually it's going to happen, not overnight, but it's going to happen over time, where people are going to say, you know what, I'm not living here anymore. I'm going to find I'm going to the country. I'm going someplace else, not only affecting the city, but also affecting the school district, therefore affecting the quality of life to all the citizens of East Grand Forks. So as you know, I've emailed all of you guys, and I'd implore you guys to look at it heavily, move forward with the 2%, at least the verbiage that goes down to the legislature, get those work groups together, start talking. You know, there's people out there. There's got to be people out there that want to be involved. But as Mr. Grassel said, nobody's going to step forward until the council takes that action. And you guys, as our elected leaders, have to take that first action. I don't think it's the place to you know, sit here and decide whether it's 1%, 1.5, or 2. We know they're not going to bond anymore. You're not going to bond out $30 million or $32 million unless you do the 2%. Put the verbiage in for 2%, figure it out from there. Let the citizens come in and talk. They might tell you guys are nuts. You know, we're only going 1%. But if you go at a 1% right now, you don't have any wiggle room. So no different than when we set tax levies within the school district. We set it high and we cut back. No different than when you guys set your budgets at the beginning of every year. You set it high and you cut it back. So those are just my thoughts. I'd implore you guys to look at it closely, because over time you can say all you want about we're not going to raise property taxes, we're not going to do this, but if we don't have a funding mechanism, that's the only funding mechanism you have: raising property taxes or cutting programs and or departments. And you'll have a lot of citizens that'll either leave or be in front of you when we start having to say, hey, instead of this many police officers, we're only going to have this many. Instead of this many firefighters, we're only going to have this many. Everything has a trickle effect, and every decision that you guys make in these council chambers have a trickle effect, whether it's on the school district, whether it's on an individual citizen within the city of Grand Forks. So I'd implore you guys to move forward with the 2% and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Helms.
That's the problem with the 2%. The 2% is fine moving forward to that. But the problem is we're going to spend that 2% on a new building. We're still not going to be able to fix the stuff we have already. And so what I'm saying is that you go to 2%, you're still going to end up raising property taxes so we can take care of what we have already. We got nothing left over to do it because we're going to spend it all on this.
Which stuff?
And the other thing,
Which stuff are you talking?
We got all kinds of buildings and everything in this city that needs work, and we haven't done anything to them. We got, like I said, we got 14 different parks that need to have work, you know.
Well,
but
Carla just said, we've kind of started addressing those issues. We've got the building fund where maybe it could be higher or not, but we've started making those transfers. And over the last probably 10 years, we've actually made progress to the point that I think we're starting to catch up. So, I mean, like you said, we take a couple of our biggest, the two biggest facilities we own, and we completely rehab them. I mean, that's our biggest maintenance that we have. I mean, we've, like I said, all of our, I guess the only other one would maybe be senior center is probably in, that's another park and rec building. But, you know, I mean, if you look at our facilities, I don't think they're not, I mean, there's always work to be done, but it's not like they're falling apart like the ones in Park and Rec. It's not your fault. I'm just saying. I mean, they haven't been touched in years.
Can I, if I can finish? The other thing that needs to be done, as Mr. Galstad said, the vibe I'm getting out there from people is they're feeling that this gets sent onto the state and gets approved to do the 2%, that they're not going to have a vote on this thing at all. We need to, as it was said by the mayor and everybody else, we need to make darn sure that this is not saying that this project is a done deal. All it's doing is, I didn't know that either until the mayor explained to me a couple meetings ago that the way the state works, you got to get approval from them first before you can do it. Instead of asking the public first if they want to do it, you got to get the approval from the state. And so they need to understand that that's what we're doing, that's being done here too, is that.
And when we first started talking about this, we explained what the process was when we did the pool prior. It was totally exact opposite because the state changed the law, the rules. So that's why we're taking this approach, and we have to take this approach. Would it be better to have the vote and the backing as we did with the pool when we went down there? Yeah, because they know everybody's behind it. We had over 70% of the votes for it. That would be the optimal thing for us to do. But they wouldn't change everything. So now we have to do it the way they want us to do it, and this is how we're going to have to move forward. So I think we need to move this forth to next week for a vote and go from there. So.
Two last things I want to make sure to talk about. Every business I've talked to has indicated that the higher you raise sales tax, it creates a disincentive for business to locate in your community because they look at it as a competitive factor against similarly situated business elsewhere. And so the higher the sales tax goes, universally every single business, and please know for the work that I do, I don't really have a big dog in this fight because the services we provide are not sales taxable other than the random like eyeglass strap or something. So really I'm talking about all the business I've talked to without exception have indicated, please keep in mind the higher you raise that tax rate, the harder it is for us to be in business in this community. And the harder it's going to be for us to attract business to this community with a higher tax rate. Because it does affect their bottom line. They feel from a competitive standpoint, they have to make adjustments in their sales price of various things throughout the year. So it does hit their bottom line profitability the higher we raise the sales tax. No doubt in the mind of our business people. And number two, our citizens are pretty sophisticated. And whether the dollar came out of their wallet through the avenue of a property tax or whether it came out of their wallet through the avenue of a sales tax, it still came out of their wallet and was spent to city priorities. They are sophisticated enough to understand, I don't have that dollar anymore, and you all spent it according to your priorities. That's okay. I mean, let's just admit that they know that. It's a dollar out of their wallet spent according to city priorities, which should, by the way, be their priorities. And that's really what we're all trying to do to everybody who's here. You're making us aware that these are your priorities, and I think there's a strong sentiment out there to do something and do it at a very high level of quality. But let's all take the view, if the dollar left their wallet and went according to city priorities, they're sensible enough to see what just happened there, from whatever avenue of taxation it came.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Demers.
I agree with you. I don't think that the purpose of the sales tax is to, bamboozle or play some sort of shell game or one pocket to the other kind of thing. I think it's just a different strategy. I think it's one that makes sense for this type of project, and that's why the legislature laid it out this way. These are regionally significant, facilities, and therefore they should be, allowed to be paid for in a regionally significant way. So I agree with you. I don't want that to be the narrative that, we're just trying to, this money's coming out of thin air. It isn't. It's $2 million that is going to be reallocated out of the economy for this, or, for this purpose. I do think it is value that we want, that people want, that they have. When Mr. Helms talks about economic development, why don't we bring businesses? There's lots of ways to bring businesses in communities. Some people go out and give cash payments and they say, come in. That usually doesn't work. You can try to cut taxes all you want. Sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I think, and I think even for the long run, or especially for the long run, the best way to bring businesses in, to make them successful, is to have I've used this word before, a vital community that's alive and growing, not just in population, but in what people are growing internally, providing those things. The current status or current nature of how businesses are attracted to places is all by watching spending, watching how those dollars go. And not every dollar that comes in through these facilities is going to be captured by East Grand Forks, it's going to be captured by Grand Forks, but the same as vice versa. As they expand, people come over to the Boardwalk, people come over to the Blue Moose, they stay at our hotel. We can't think about this as just an East Grand Forks. issue. While we have our East Side Pride and all that, we know that as the greater Grand Forks becomes more vital, it needs to attract more people, not just that are going to come and live here, but that are going to come and spend their dollars. And that's, for me, the best way to bring business here. Obviously, it's not going to necessarily bring all of your primary, manufacturing and all that stuff. But even, look at the state of Minnesota. It's consistently ranked in the top 5 for best business community or climates in the country. Why? It's not because it's low tax. It's not because it's, of whatever. It's because it provides its citizens with the best and highest quality of life, which makes employers able to attract employees. And we all know that the labor market is being harder and harder to fill, and people are going to be more and more competitive. So as our businesses have to be more competitive, they want people that will want to live in these communities. We have to fight to keep these communities vital. And I don't want it, we're late, but this is an important issue, so we could talk about it all night. The only question I have is, have we been in contact with Representative Keel or Senator Johnson to give them a heads up on this? Are they on board, or have they given any feedback on this, or where?
Yeah, yes, we have met with them. We've kept them updated, and then we'll get in touch with them as soon as we know the direction that the council wants to go.
And I've spoken to I've spoken to both of them personally, and they are willing to do whatever the city council directs them to do. So, for example, if the council votes to bring this forward, they are more than happy to bring this forward and carry the water on it.
And a big comment taken away from meeting with them from each of them was that if the city council wants to see this project move forward, it certainly meets the criteria of regional impact, number one. And number two, they both felt like all the projects we discussed were projects that our citizens should get a chance to vote on.
I just had one thing, when we talked about the ADA, and Reid can also pipe in, but we do have a plan on how to update not just the ADA in the parks, but we also will have it on our sidewalks and stuff, and we are setting aside in our budgets to do that. And we have some already in 2020 to do that. So just to keep you updated on that we are working on the ADA requirements.
So next week you'll have a resolution in front of us so we can vote on it?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty.
I'm just going to say something. I'm Terry Forey. I'm from 715 8th Street Southeast. I've lived here all my life, and I don't have to get up to a microphone because most people can hear me.
There's people online.
Yeah, you're on the YouTube here.
And memorized. Okay. I'm Terry Forey. I'm at 715 8th Street Southeast. And the only thing that I think back, I am not going to be here in 30 years. Some of us in the room will not be, but our children and our grandchildren will be here. And this is the only way we're going to be able to keep them. I truly believe. I've got 13 of them here right now, grandchildren, and I am thinking they will spend the rest of their life here. And this is one of the reasons that they would want to spend the rest of their life here, is in a community that wants the best that they can give. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Moved by Grassel, second by Johnson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Means adjourned.
Okay, hockey game.